Part 3, I guess. The Will of the Lies Gangs. Upon returning to my room, I summoned the Lies Gang retainers who had been waiting in my chambers, unable to attend the Obstacle family meeting. Riarda, Audley, Angelica, Hartma, Cornelius, Lenore, and Brunhilde were all present. I started by explaining what we had discussed with Sylvester and the others and asked my questions. Was the Ob correct in saying this was all the will of the Lies Gangs? Lenore and Brunhilde, who had spent the winter attending the Royal Academy with me, immediately went pale. I would rather he not phrase it as if we were all in agreement, Lenore said flatly, making her displeasure clear. At no point was I consulted about this matter. Brunhilde's expression grew clouded, like she was searching for the right words. I was not consulted either, so this certainly was not the will of all the Lies Gangs. Perhaps it could instead be described as the will of those from the generation before our duchies climbed through the rankings. I have heard voices of discontent about how our adults are struggling to keep up with our rank. And many have said the culture among us students is diverging more and more from that of our forebears. Incidentally, the belief that I was better suited to being the next Ob than Wilfrid had remained strong within the Lies Gangs during this entire time. My visits to the temple and overall poor health had sown seeds of doubt, but now that I was recovering and our joint research had proven the importance of religious ceremonies, the voices in support of me grew growing louder. I see, I replied. Riarda, did you know about this in advance of our meeting? She gave me a thin smile, her hands balled into trembling fists. I would not have found myself grappling with a sudden urge to avoid Lord Sylvester, to scold Lord Sylvester then and there. So what if this is the will of the Lies Gangs, that our own Ob is acting as an ordonnance for Gibbs is pathetic. Riarda had ultimately managed to keep her emotions under control, which I greatly admired, but seeing her so worked up was genuinely scary. As expected then, nobody at the Royal Academy knew about this. I started scanning the rest of the group. Angelica put a hand on her cheek and gave a troubled smile the very instant my eyes met hers, so I decided not to even bother questioning her. Did you know Cornelius? Lamprecht told me a few things, but my knowledge of the situation is pretty bare bones. Now that the Born Veronica faction's major powers have been removed, their survival depends almost entirely on Lord Wilfrid and his retainers. The Lies Gangs have the upper hand, however, and will only support him becoming the next Archduke if all of their demands are met. So, Wilfrid was carrying out secret instructions to prove that he was fit to be the next Ob. He was keeping them very close to his chest and wasn't relying on anyone else. Lamprecht asked me to help in any way I could without letting the Lies Gangs find out, Cornelius went on, wearing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. But after our meeting, I think I would rather sit back and see whether Lord Wilfrid wins the Lies Gangs over by himself. How can I possibly be of any use to him when he won't even explain his situation to us? Besides, the stage schematics that you've offered us are more than enough. In conclusion, he thought that Wilfrid needed no further support whatsoever. Audley, you were here in the castle the entire time, weren't you? I asked. Did you hear anything? I received many a question from Lies Gang nobles, she replied. They wished to know your interests, the times you had grown emotional, what you hold dear, what you protect, the people you have cut off. They were really quite thorough. I told them that you treasure those close to you and practice meritocracy. But how did that lead to their request for our rank to be lowered, I asked, not understanding the connection at all. Audley looked at me as quizzically as I was looking at her. I found it curious as well. As I understand it, Lady Elvira and the others were also accosted quite often, and they found it all very troublesome. She was Elvira's friend and a fellow member of the Florencia faction, so she had presumably been told all this during tea parties. She continued, Lady Florencia's pregnancy is still not known to the majority of nobles, which is precisely why so many noblewomen are calling for you to associate with her more. The duchy is already in a state of chaos, and they wish for you to prioritize female socializing if you intend to become our first wife. Well, unfortunately, I had wanted to say that I didn't have the time, but Audley nodded and cut me off. Lady Elvira and I are well aware. She said that with Lord Ferdinand gone, you have more work than the temple and with the printing industry, and therefore do not have the time for socializing. I regret to inform you that this excuse was not enough. The firm response was that you should be dedicated to the work of women instead of taking that of men. It was because of my accomplishments in the temple and the Royal Academy that my decision to abandon female socializing that everyone seemed to assume that I was aiming to become the next Ob. They thought that I was bringing attention to myself while at the same time making zero effort to prop up Wilfrid as his first wife. To be fair, they're not wrong. Yeah, they're not wrong on that one. Anytime I was focused on the printing industry and doing business with the merchants of other duchies, or mobilizing the Gutenbergs, or working hard as part of the Better Grades Committee, my only aim was to succeed. I was so focused on profits and efficiency that trying to make Wilfried look good or keeping my head down as his future first wife never even occurred to me. It certainly hadn't helped that Lutz, Benno, Ferdinand, and Sylvester hadn't even ever urged me to consider such things. Although I now understand why it was important for me to stand down, it was too late for me to lead the work of repairing a fractured duchy to the boys. I didn't know which duties to give up or when, nor was there anyone who could take my place. In other words, I'm not very well suited to being Wilfried's first wife, huh? Though I suppose I wouldn't be well suited to being anyone's first wife, considering my complete lack of interest in romance and marriage. Lady Elvira often said that Ehrenfest would not be able to function without Lord Ferdinand, oddly remarked. I believe she was correct. There is no one to give a clear and grounded explanation for the Ob's decisions, create environments in which you can effectively socialize, or confirm and manage all of our intentions. Even if we were all operating individually, Ferdinand would have found a way to unify us and make things work. Now that he was gone, however, Audley was convinced that everything was falling apart. Were he here now, she continued, he would have arranged a meeting for you and the Ob to confirm one another's intentions. That no such thing occurred is because... Pardon me, Mother, Hartman interjected. That particular detail has nothing to do with Lord Ferdinand. I think you will find the Lias gangs are the ones responsible. I turned to look at him, and immediately he smiled at me. He looked so bright and casual that I couldn't help but being suspicious. Hartmut, I said, my eyes narrowed, you knew what the Ob was going to say during today's meeting, didn't you? Or rather, what he had been told to say. What makes you think that? He asked in response. There was a gleeful sparkle in his eyes that told me I was correct. Your eyes, I said to him. Any time someone disrespects me, whether they be a blue priest from a top-ranking duchy, or a member of the royal family, you always give them this very scary look. What made those occasions doubly scary was that he would maintain a casual smile the entire time, but not once during or after our meeting had he gotten that look in his eye, even though Riarda was angrily clenching her fists. Hartman broke into a grin, then knelt before me with a very severe look on his face. Oh, God. Oh, my revered Lady Rosemine, there is no need for you to tolerate an Ob who would speak so cruelly, nor his son who follows in his footsteps. Just as you now lead those of the Royal Academy under one banner, you must seek to unify Ehrenfest, bringing even Lias gangs into your fold. The students whom you have protected so carefully are waiting for you to rise up and take your rightful place as our future Ob. Hartmut, shut up, we're not doing this here. His tone was dry, but also strangely performative. It was clear that he didn't really believe what he was saying. Thank God. Did the Lias Gang faction tell you to rile me up after the meeting, I asked? That is correct. The Lias Gang's desire is to eliminate all traces of Lady Veronica's influence, and not a drop of her blood flows through your veins. They believe that now is their best chance to make you the next Ob, as Ob Ehrenfest has just cast aside his support base in full. The purge had been carried out to protect Ehrenfest, but it was important to remember that over half of the Ob supporters had been of the former Veronica faction. Many of his own retainers had been punished, even. Hartmut had said that Sylvester had cleansed the duchy's rot so thoroughly that he had destroyed his own footing in the process. Those who had given their names to Georgine were executed, those who had committed crimes to earn Veronica's favor were punished, and the former Veronica faction was effectively destroyed in one fell swoop. Now the only members of the faction with any influence were the Ob and his children, but the hardliners of the Lias Gang faction were too fixated on their own wounds to support even them. The Lias Gangs would have accepted things as they are now if all of the remaining Archduke candidates were related to Lady Veronica, Hartmut continued, but there is you, Lady Rosemine. Indeed, I was an exception, perhaps particularly because of my ties to Karstadt's mother and Verlefascist. I was part of an Archducal branch family rich with Lias Gang blood. Though I'm actually a commoner from the lower city who was born with the devouring. But they don't know that. The only ones who know that are Ferdinand, Karstad, and Sylvester. As far as I know. In addition to your bloodline, Hartmut said, you came first in class 3 years in a row, have deep connections to top-ranking duchies, and socialized with the royal family. You have also brought new industries to Ehrenfest and started new trends. Lady Rosemine, the famous saint of Ehrenfest, is best suited to becoming the next Ob, the Lias Gangs proclaim, and they are correct. Is it just me, or are Hartmut's exaggerated reports making the Lias Gang faction hold me in even higher regard? It must be my imagination. But I thought I made it clear to Gibbs, Lias Gang, Groschel, and Holdenzel that I have no intention of becoming the next Ob, I muttered. Yes, the top members of the Lias Gang faction are aware of this. But the purge has provided too great an opportunity. You must also consider your great-grandfather's dying wish, and the efforts of your grandfather, Lord Bonifacius. Grandfather? That reminded me. Bonifacius had said something strange at the end of our meeting. I'd never expected it when he was supposed to be supporting the Archduke. Hartman nodded. It seems that Lord Bonifacius does not look kindly upon you visiting the temple. As it turned out, Bonifacius had said, Rosamund is clearly the most competent of all the Archduke candidates, so why is she being relegated to the temple? I understand that the work there needs to be done, but if the duty must fall to an Archduke candidate, send Charlotte or the already disgraced Wilfrid instead. He was trying to save me from the temple, arguing that there was no need for me to do jobs that would have belittled me in the Royal Academy of the Sovereignty. If you can't make Wilfrid the High Bishop because he's already the next Ob, then make Rosamund the next Ob instead, he had apparently continued. She has the largest support base and the skills required for the position. But I want to spend as much time at the temple as I can. In short, Hartman said, there is much at play here. Those of Bonifacius hope to make you the next Ob to save you from the temple. The hardliners wish to purge every drop of Lady Veronica's blood from Ehrenfest, while those in the mainstream just want an Ob with a familial connection to the Lies gangs if possible. Those who are less motivated will support your claim to the Archducal seat only if you desire it, while the more meritocratic feel that the role should go to whomever has the most mana. All those varying opinions could hardly be considered unified, but if one were to take a more holistic approach, the will of the Lies gangs will certainly be for you to become the next Ob. Some of the Lies gangs would apparently cooperate with raising Archduch's rank for the sake of an Ob with their blood, but absolutely not for one related to Veronica. It sounds like a very disparate consensus, I noted. Surely a light prod would be enough to make their collective wish shatter into pieces. The bonds connecting them may seem weak now, but that isn't how they appear from the outside. Plus, with their own faction having been purged, there are almost no nobles remaining that support the Ob and Lord Wilfrid. The will of the Lies gangs surely feels much greater than it really is. As he said, there are barely any nobles left who supported Sylvester and Wilfrid. The only ones who came to mind were the retainers, those who were against me becoming the Ob, and our current momentum being maintained, those who wanted Ehrenfest to stay as they knew it, and those who were too old to receive new divine protections, and my mana compression method and were annoyed about the younger generation overtaking them. Nobles from the former Veronica faction who had avoided punishment were supporting Wilfrid too, apparently. That said, Hartman added, the Lies gangs were faced with the dilemma. How were they to make you the next Ob when you have no interest in the position? The solution they came up with was to pit you against the rest of the Archducal family and ultimately have you isolated. They made arrangements for you to lose your faith in the Ob, hoping to compel you to rise up to protect your faction. That was when they approached Lord Bonifacius and pleaded for his aid in freeing you from the temple. Bonifacius' main concern was getting me out of the temple. Although he truly believed that I would make a better Ob, he understood the many trials and tribulations that a ruling Archduchess faced and was happy for me to become a first wife instead. That meant I would need to receive a proper education, though, with Florencia guiding me instead of merely leaving me in the temple. So that's why Florencia was pushing for me to socialize. Hartman continued, Lies gang nobles told Lord Bonifacius that, as the rumors suppose, you have been forced into a position wherein you cannot speak your honest thoughts. That's being a noble in general, dude. That's being a noble in general, where you cannot voice your honest opinion because you are a noble. You have to keep your emotions in check. And also being a member of the Archducal family, you kind of can't really voice your true thoughts anyway, still. They asked him to keep watch so that the Ob does not discreetly force your hand, and he agreed. He also said that he would confirm your intentions. It was due to Bonifacius keeping such a close eye on things that Sylvester hadn't been able to invite me to a pre-meeting to discuss the topics that would come up during our meeting with the whole family. Naturally, they made various advances toward the Ob himself, laying foundations for their own moves. He could not tell me the details, so I am your retainer, but I did learn that the Lies gangs were using their support as bait to engineer a falling out within the Archducal family. I can only assume that the Ob's hands were tied, not only because he had lost his support base, but also because of the weakness created by Lady Florencia's pregnancy. Much like Bonifacius, Hartman had been assigned an observational role. His task was to see whether Wilfrid and the Archducal couple actually swallowed the Lies gang's demands without calling me for a meeting or making any unreasonable requests of their own. As your retainer, I was asked to confirm your aims. Of course, if you wish to become the next Ob, I would ensure that it happened without the assistance of the Lies gangs. But I am well aware that is not the case. Indeed, I replied, then fixed Hartman with a stern glare. But why did you keep all this a secret from me? He teasingly raised an eyebrow at me and said, "There are many things that I wish to confirm. What preparations did the Lies gangs make now that the Veronica faction is out of the picture? How would Lord Wolfred and the Archducal family maneuver them? How would you view the Archducal family afterward?" And so on. Hartman had spent the entire meeting standing behind me and quietly observing. What had he thought of the proceedings, and what conclusions had he drawn from them? But as I was pondering those things, Brunhilde gave a profound grimace. How pitiful are the Lies gangs when Ehrenfest needs to unify and prepare to face other duchies in the face of this extortion. Is Groschel still asking the Archducal family to perform its Entwicklung? She shook her head. "I never thought the day would come when I would be ashamed to be a Lies gang." "You sure are fastidious," Brunhilde, Hartman said with a smile. Though they were constantly fighting for power, both the Veronica and the Lies gang factions have always been Ehrenfest nobles at heart. It is far from unusual that they would think in the same way. Their main concerns are protecting their own status and lifestyle. They do not care about raising our duchy's rank or matching the Archducal family's efforts to keep up with our new status. You spend too much time gazing skyward that you're now blind to everything around you, much like Lady Rosamund. Wait, what's that supposed to mean? "In that case, Hartman, what in the world are you seeing?" Brunhilde asked him. "What are you thinking?" "I only ever think of granting Lady Rosamund's wishes, but if you would allow me to voice a more personal desire—" He trailed off, then a menacing smile spread across his lips. It was the same face that Ferdinand made whenever he was plotting. Ooh, he's taking after Ferdinand on this one. At this point, Lady Rosamund has gone far beyond being a mere saint. She is grand enough to be called a genuine goddess. Yet these worthless Geeves think she would meant to rule their equally worthless duchy. I wish for nothing more than to crush them into dust and scatter them to the wind. Holy! Isn't that a big stream? As we all watched in shock, our mouths hanging open, Hartman continued his eloquent speech. Lady Rosamund desires books, as well as the printing and papermaking industries required to create them. Yes, such things are currently spreading through the Lies gang provinces, but that is purely because they were given priority as family. Do not forget that Ilgner was the first province to create its own workshops. He was right, the printing industry wasn't at all reliant on the Lies gangs. I had only prioritized sending Gutenbergs to their provinces, because everyone had said that I should reward the faction supporting me. Hartman persisted. Because the Ob has cut down his support base once again, he requires the support and cooperation of the Lies gangs, now the largest of our duchy's factions, to unify Ehrenfest. You, however, do not require their support at all. I wouldn't go that far, I replied, losing confidence in arguments. I still need them a bit longer, right? Or I still need them a little bit, right? I tried to find some reassurance in the room, and my Lies gang retainers were all deep in thought. Even Angelica looked contemplative, though I could tell it was just an act. There is no longer any need for the Lies gangs, Hartman concluded. At this point, even nobles of other duchies are attempting to adopt the printing industry. And as you wish to spread printing all throughout the country and produce countless new books, Lady Rosamund, we should start focusing beyond our duchy's borders, instead of messing around with this Lies gang farce. Lenore nodded, and Hartman's correct. Lady Rosamund does not require the Lies gang support whatsoever. She actually looked quite impressed with Hartman, and while that wasn't what I'd wanted, I couldn't really blame her. I was impressed too. As he had said, my only desires were to spread printing and completely fill the world with books. His grasp on the situation was so good that it was scary. Foolishly enough, the Lies gangs believe that being Lady Rosamund's family and greater supports means they can control her. They are merely mistaken. These old simpletons are completely oblivious to their current standing. Indeed, trying to direct Lady Rosamund was a grueling and almost impossible task even for Lord Ferdinand. Nuh-uh, that's not true. Ferdinand had me in the palm of his hand. He kinda did. Thankfully, he wasn't working with the Lies gangs, or she would never freaking know. I wanted to protest, but Brunhilde then added that even attending tea parties with me was exhausting. Instead, I pursed my lips and averted my eyes. The Lies gangs' conspiratorial nature did not change when Lady Veronica came into power, and it persists even now that they have regained dominance, Hartman said. Plus, because they were raised as Ehrenfest nobles, Lord Wolfred and the Ob will be highly susceptible to these old methods, which means they would be more likely to fall through the Lies gang's plots. They wouldn't think twice about manipulating others either. However, Hartman continued, they fundamentally cannot understand that Lady Rosamund wishes to be in the temple, or that she would be most happy staying in a library for the rest of her days. Hartman says that, but he was raised to follow the same culture too, wasn't he? How has he managed to transcend it? That's what scares me. Even Ferdinand hasn't done that yet. I considered it a good thing that our Archducal family was so close and got along better than perhaps any other in Jurgensmith, he said. I wish to treasure the atmosphere that allows you to smile, Lady Rosamund. The last thing I want is for a mistake to rupture your connection, isolate anyone, or have you oppose one another. But that's what ended up happening, I muttered. After sitting through the meeting and witnessing Wilfred and Charlotte's exchange after it was hard to imagine things ever going as smoothly as they had in the past. It need only be mended, Hartman replied. A group at odds with itself can easily be united through the introduction of a common enemy. That was the technique you employed at the Royal Academy, was it not? To unify the former Veronica faction and the rest of the Ehrenfest students, I had gotten everyone to focus on beating other duchies. Hartman was saying that we should take a similar approach to bring the Archducal family back together. As our duchy's breadbasket, he continued, Liesgang cares not about interduchy relations or our position within Jürgenschmidt. That is why its people have no qualms about telling us to lower our rank. The elderly have never experienced the advantages that come with our higher position, nor have they witnessed the way it affects how other duchies treat us. They do not understand how we feel as we work to raise our duchy's rank. As the younger generation, we have so much to gain from strong relations with other duchies, friendships, new marriage prospects, better treatment, ease of gathering intelligence. Hartman listed all the advantages, then said that he wasn't about to abandon them for the sake of the elderly's lame demands. Though they cannot admit it here in Ehrenfest in front of the adults, there are many among the younger generation who wish to overturn this so-called will of the Liesgangs, Hartman said. Should we not gather them in a new support base for the Ob who similarly wishes to change the duchy? Our enemy should not be one faction or another. Instead, we should oppose the old fools who do not want Ehrenfest to grow. Hearing his firmly spoken argument, I tried to gauge the reaction of my other retainers. They were all Liesgangs, but they seemed more than willing to oppose the parent will of their faction. Had they been corrupted while serving me and working to raise our duchy's rank? Lenore added, we can see from Lord Melkor's retainers as well as the students of the former Veronica faction with whom you interacted at the Royal Academy that there is a great interest in obtaining new divine protections. You shouldn't have any trouble bringing the younger generation together, and you might even be able to win over enough people to create a faction. She then adopted a very calculating expression, coldly tallying the number of people who had received my mana compression method, and all the lay nobles who had expressed an interest in learning it. Even though she was suggesting we oppose her own parents' generation, she didn't seem the slightest bit hesitant. On the instinct, I turned to Cornelius. He gave me an amused grin and said, You know, Rosemine, I do have an idea. If you don't mind me speaking as your older brother for a moment. Liesgang takes great pride in being the duchy's breadbasket, right? Then why don't we embrace that? We'll always need people who can produce food through traditional methods, and if we respectfully emphasize that fact, I'm sure we can satisfy them. The fact of the matter was that the Liesgangs were my supporters. Cornelius' approach would allow us to elevate them instead of cutting them off, while simultaneously relegating the conservative, change-opposing adults to their backwater provinces. He seemed to be in agreement with Hartman. Lady Rosemine oddly interjected, If you have no desire to become the next Ob, then I would advise you to leave gathering the younger generation and creating a faction to Lord Wolfried. Give him the suggestion and then withdraw. You are busy with the temple and do not need to involve yourself with the work of men. In essence, it will be unwise for me to ignore the calls of the noblewomen. Mother is correct, Hartman added. As you do not require the support of a faction, there is no need for you to make one. Hartman, I said, propose the idea to Lord Wolfried and then let him take care of the rest. He will consider it his duty as the next Archduke and work hard to complete it. If that proves too much for him, even with that silver spoon so firmly in his mouth, then he truly is irredeemably incompetent. I decided it was probably best to ignore that last line. Hartman was a bit of an extremist, but he was still technically thinking of ways to prop up Wolfried and unify Ehrenfest. His harshness surely came from his high expectations. Yeah, like I said, he's kind of like Ferdinand in that regard. Let us end these troublesome matters at once and return to the temple as soon as possible, he concluded. I am tremendously eager to repeat the ritual for obtaining divine protections. As anyone should realize, succeeding with religious matters is infinitely more important for the saintly Lady Rosemine. At last, his true motivation comes to light. Now that I understood what was really driving Hartman, all of my nerves seemed to melt away. There was no point in dwelling on the matter any further. I would make the faction suggestion so that the Archducal family could start healing and advocate at Sylvester acquire a new support base, after casting aside his old one for the sake of the duchy. Well then, let us gather together the men, motivated and ambitious youth, and cause a generational shift in Ehrenfest. Booyah! Speaking with the Ob. After getting reordered to deliver my request for a meeting with Sylvester, I reunited with Charlotte, who had presumably been asking her own retainers about the will of the Liesgangs. She explained that she hadn't actually learned much from them. She had considerably fewer Liesgangs in her service than I did to mine, so that was probably why. But she had received a lot of very important information from Florencia's retinue. As it turned out, extremist nobles were actually hoping to assassinate Wilfrid, believing that the best way to make me Ehrenfest's next Ob was to remove him from the picture entirely. Yeah, it's the last resort there, but yeah. In response, I mentioned that the Liesgangs were giving Sylvester and Wilfrid secret demands to complete. This made Charlotte look very worried. Is it possible that the Liesgangs are tricking them, she asked. Well, it does seem more suspicious alongside that claim of them wanting Wilfrid dead. I can't say for sure, though. I expect the Lies Gangs are pressuring them and making demands they cannot refuse. Thus, I believe the things they said to us during our meetings were not their true opinions. It is frustrating that we were not made privy to these details, Charlotte murmured, apparently feeling left out. Is it because we are unreliable? No, you are as reliable as can be, Charlotte. Perhaps they chose to keep us in the dark as a way to protect us during these uncertain times. Sister, were I not the figurehead of the Lies Gangs, I imagine Sylvester would not be caught under their thumb and stuck having to lower Ehrenfest's rank at their demand. At the moment, I feel that he is protecting me. Sylvester obviously knew that Florencia's retainers were feeding Charlotte information. It would have been so easy for him to kill me and put an end to all this chaos. I was a mere commoner, so that was entirely within his power. But instead, he was protecting me and trying to complete the Lies Gang's demands. For that reason, I want to help Sylvester in turn, I said, then revealed our plan to speed up the generational shift and create a brand new faction for Sylvester and Wilfried. Please assist me with this, Charlotte. It is only an idea for now, but would it not make their position so much more stable? I agree that it would be effective, but it will be quite some time before the younger generation can operate as Father's faction. On their own, they will not have the influence necessary to restrain the Lies Gangs. She was calmly asserting that while our desire to make use of the chaos was admirable, our actual plan wasn't good enough. Furthermore, she continued, concern about and resistance to the changing climate are not felt exclusively among the adults. Even within the Ehrenfest dormitory, there was opposition to the children of the former Veronica faction being treated on the same level as everyone else, and to the idea that the archnobles should earn their own money. The lay nobles and med nobles had accepted my suggestion that those who wished to learn my mana compression method should earn the money themselves, but archnobles who had never done such work before had openly despised the idea. Charlotte had found out about this through her retainers. Their resistance waned only as a result of your archnoble retainers leading by example, so we will need to guide them again. We must extend a hand to those who are struggling to keep up with all these dramatic changes. Charlotte was very talented when it came to reconciling the perspectives of others, so I took her advice to heart. I also asked how we could get everyone to accept the coming revolution. Above all else, she replied, I think Father should take a Lies Gang as his second wife. Why is that? The Lies Gangs have always secured their power through marriage, have they not? By taking an especially progressive member of their faction as a second wife, Father could simultaneously appease the Lies Gangs and support the generational shift. I expect this method would settle things more peacefully than any other. She cast her eyes down, but Mother's pregnancy means it is no longer an option. Babies were very sensitive to mana, so Sylvester wouldn't be able to take a second wife until at least a year after Florencia gave birth. In fact, he would probably end up needing to wait 2. While a newborn was mostly dependent on his mother's mana, the fathers played a role as well. It was all too far down the line to remedy any of the chaos currently affecting the duchy. Charlotte gave me a self-deprecating smile. Unlike you, sister, I am unable to come up with the novel ideas. I cannot see beyond the customs of noble culture that have been hammered into me since birth. And since I cannot provide no better options, I shall do my best to help Father and Wilfried obtain a new faction. I spoke with Melkor's retainers as well, but they couldn't offer anything that I didn't already know. Right now, it seemed that I was more knowledgeable about the Lies Gangs than anyone. Melkor's retainers were most concerned about the temple, and they bombarded me with all sorts of questions. I assured them that I would use my meeting with the Ob to secure them a budget, as well as permission to move existing furniture to the temple. I also spoke with those serving Wilfried, but it was a complete waste of time. They offered absolutely nothing in the way of new information, repeating only that their lord was working hard, and I should support him as his fiancé. I responded that as his fiancé, I was going to advise the Ob to create a new faction, and that I was going to be too busy in the temple to do much else. The next day, Matthias and the others went with the Knight's Order to investigate the Gibbs estates. They were aiming to be back before the feast, which meant they didn't have much time at all. Karstedt hadn't gone with them. He needed to guard Sylvester. But he had made good on his word and emphasized that the retainers were to be treated well. These students gave their names to the Archducal family and served them as retainers, he had said. Do not look down on them. The following days were all spent busily despite the fact that we had to stay in the northern building, and eventually it came time for my meeting with Sylvester. He was coming to me in part because I wasn't allowed to go to him, or also because there was a barrier here and a sizable portion of the Knight's Order was absent for the investigation. Bonifacius wanted to join. Is that all right? Sylvester asked upon his arrival. I had wanted this to be a secret conversation, but maybe Bonifacius was continuing his role as a monitor for the Lies Gangs. Well, he's part of the Archducal family too, so it would make sense to get him on our side. There was no reason to consider him an enemy. Sure, he was going along with the Lies Gangs, but that was because he was concerned about me and wanted to save me from the temple. He wasn't part of the group that was absolutely dead set on making me the next into the next Ob. I think my being here is reasonable enough, Bonifacius said. Now that Ferdinand is gone, I'm needed to come out of retirement to help with paperwork. You have nothing to hide, right? I smiled, shook my head, and gestured for him and Sylvester to sit opposite me. You are more than welcome to join us, grandfather. It must be tiresome doing all that work. We have no secrets to keep from you, and if anything comes up that we would rather not have our retainers know, we will simply use sound-blocking magic tools. Karstad was standing behind Sylvester as always. It was strange having Bonifacius here instead of Ferdinand, who was so much broader and more muscular than the chair looked tiny in comparison, and the air he exuded was a lot more oppressive. No sooner had I sipped my tea and eaten one of the sweets from the table, the usual routine to prove that nothing had been poisoned, that Bonifacius began to dig in. It's been about a year since we had tea like this, he said to me. I thought back to our breaks together during last year's Archduke conference. Tea parties like this were a much simpler affair since I didn't need to hold his hand and risk losing limbs in the process. Sorry to say this, but we won't be able to spend time together like this during this year's Archduke conference, I noted. I was asked to assist the royal family. Though, if you were to come to the temple, we could always have tea there. Bonifacius frowned and muttered the temple. It seemed that he really did find it unpleasant. Melkor's retainers will soon start going there on a regular basis, so as will mine, I said. I will not force you to come, but I would suggest that you drop by at least once. The temple is not what you might expect. I will welcome you with sweets, and I am sure Angelica will be overjoyed to see you. Bonifacius continued to knit his brow, but said that he would consider it. I really wanted to change his impression of the temple, no matter how long it might take. I turned to Sylvester. Now, about Melkor entering the temple. This was the primary reason I had given for our meeting. I explained what preparations Melkor would need and asked that he be given a budget. I must also ask that you give us permission to take some of the furniture being stored in the castle for use in the temple. Oh, and we require a cook from the court kitchens. We can offer a great shrine maiden to serve as an assistant. You can even hire a new one and have them trained to one day work in the Italian restaurant. You want to train a cook in Melkor's kitchen? Bonifacius asked, his light blue eyes widening. Using already trained chefs was common practice, but he had never even considered training one from the ground up. Sylvester nodded on my behalf and noted that this was normal in my kitchens. The Lower City's Italian restaurant is a place that merchants of all duchies wishes to visit at least once, I said. If we are to open an Italian restaurant in Groschel after performing its Entwickeln, then we will need to start training chefs now, otherwise we will not have time. Naturally, I intended to train chefs in my own kitchens as well. Ella had already made it clear that she wanted to have children, so this will give her a chance to take some time off. Also, I continued, Charlotte has informed me that the children of the playroom were mostly abandoned over the winter. I don't think that's true, Sylvester protested, and once they were given food, looked after by the playroom's attendants, and allowed to meet with any of their parents who came to visit. I shook my head. I don't mean their living conditions were poor. I was told that because the teachers were all going to the northern building for Melkor, the children in the playroom received no education whatsoever. You must keep in mind that they no longer have parents to hire family tutors for them. If something does not change, their education will end up in a truly dire state. Bonifacius was blinking in disbelief, but Sylvester merely said, and? I could tell that he was wanting me to get to the point. I intended to host them in the temple as apprentice blue shrine maidens and blue priests and shrine maidens. Why? To educate them, supply the temple with mana, and distance them from the malice of the gossiping nobles. Of course, this will all come at a price, and the expenses will need to come from the children's parents. But I think it will do the children a lot more good than staying in the playroom. What do you think? Sylvester stroked his chin in thought. Meanwhile, Bonifacius gave me an incredulous look and said, Rosemary, why are you going to such lengths for the children of criminals? They did not commit any crimes themselves, and it makes no sense to punish the innocent, I replied plainly. Further, Ehrenfest is already suffering from a lack of nobles. Yes, crushing those children would be simple, but why would we deny ourselves such valuable manpower? Though it may require some effort, we are much better off aiding them, educating them, and getting them to work for the duchy. Bonifacius stared at me bemused. So you're acting out of self-interest. As I always do, I evaluate the situation as a member of the archducal family and determine that this is the best response. Others may call me a saint, but I am nothing of the sort, nor do I presume that I can save everyone for free. I explained that Ehrenfest had a small population for a middle duchy, and that we had to pay close attention to the rituals and mana that have supported our harvests. Bonifacius might not have realized it yet because he didn't attend the interduchy tournament, but the general consensus about religious ceremonies was changing all across Jürgensmith. After returning my attention to Sylvester, I continued, taking the children left in the playroom as apprentice blue priests and shrine maidens would give Florencia one less job to do. It would help both her and Charlotte. So how do you feel about it? I don't mind, but what will the Lies Gang say? Sylvester adopted a thoroughly exasperated expression and turned to Bonifacius, who was presumably his window into the Lies Gang's collective mind. Oh, have the Lies Gangs already offered to look after the children, I asked. I cannot think of any other reason why the Odd would need to be concerned about the opinions of Gibbs. I gave a very exaggerated sigh and then said, "It seems that you've been carrying out many unreasonable tasks for the Lies Gangs in return for their support and cooperation. My existence has caused so many issues, dear adoptive father, and I thank you ever so much for shouldering the burden of dealing with them all." "Rosemine, how do you know that?" Bonifacius exclaimed. He looked at Sylvester, who hadn't reacted anywhere near as much, and then at Karstedt, who put up his hands to say that he wasn't to blame. It was a likely sign that Bonifacius had been keeping a close eye on his and Navarro's movements after completely cutting off my contact with Sylvester. Sylvester acted so unlike his usual self during our meeting the other day, and it was easy to infer that something must be happening beneath the surface. Thus, I gathered intelligence from my Lies Gang retainers. I do not know the details, but Sylvester, you and Wilfred were given some manner of task to complete, were you not? This time, Sylvester reacted strongly. His features hardened into a look of complete outrage, which he directed at Bonifacius as he shouted, "What is the meaning of this? I was told that as long as I accepted their conditions, my children wouldn't be dragged into this. Explain." "I wasn't aware of this," Bonifacius replied, frowning. It seemed that he were all relying on mere fragments of the whole picture. "As I understand it," I said, "extremists within the Lies Gang faction are trying to divide the Archducal family. Charlotte is worried that the tasks being forced upon Wilfred are part of a plan to make me the next Ob." "What in the—" Sylvester muttered, the blood draining from his face. Bonifacius wasn't looking too good either. It seemed that they had different information from the Lies Gangs. "Rosemine, have you told Wilfred about the danger of his task?" Sylvester asked. "His retainers weren't willing to communicate with me. It's possible that one of the tasks he was given was to make me act more like a first wife, considering they kept telling me to support him as his fiancé. They must consider me a latent enemy because I already have the Lies Gang support." I'd assumed this was all par for the course, but Bonifacius was far from amused. "They would treat you, his fiancé, as an enemy," he roared. I raised an eyebrow at him. "But are you not behaving like our enemy too, keeping an eye on Sylvester and me at the Lies Gang's request? You have had a scary look on your face ever since I returned from the Royal Academy." "That's not true. I'm not scary, right?" "Do I look scary?" Bonifacius stammered, clapping his hands against his cheeks. It was such an unexpected sight that Sylvester burst into laughter, and the tension in the room immediately dissipated. "You don't look scary anymore," I said, chuckling as well. "You're just worried about me, right? You'll always be on my side." "Of course." "Then know that Sylvester is not treating me poorly in the least, and try not to look so terrifying in the future." "Right." I smiled at Bonifacius, who gave me a conflicted nod, and then looked back at Sylvester. "I only know what Hartman and the others have told me, so I cannot say whether my understanding of the situation is the truth. I was told not to be intrusive in meetings, and I was worried that this discussion might seem meddlesome, but—" "Nah, I owe you one," Sylvester said, shaking his head in all seriousness. "Now that Ferdinand is gone, my information network is crippled." In the past, it had apparently been common for Ferdinand to compile Justice's intelligence into curated reports, which he would send to Sylvester alongside a few notes on how to react. Sylvester really was struggling without him. "I'm impressed that Hartman knows as much as he does," Sylvester added. "Well, Justice did teach him in the temple. Hartman hasn't managed to cast as wide a net. But he certainly does know a lot about the Lies Gangs. I promise to pass his findings straight on to Sylvester going forward." Bonifacius gave me a stern look. "Rosemine, why do you trust Sylvester this much? Do you not worry that he's trying to deceive you?" "Of course not. Were he so cruel, he would have simply killed me to save himself the trouble. Or he could have ended my adoption and returned me to the rank of an archnoble, stripping me of my claim to the archducal seat. He's done neither of those things. On the contrary, he's shouldering all of the Lies Gang's demands for my sake. Why would I not trust him when he's doing so much to protect me?" One could argue that getting rid of me wasn't even an option for Sylvester. My mana contribution to the archducal family was too essential now that Ferdinand was gone. Still, he was dealing with the problems that I was making instead of giving up on them, and that deserved praise in itself. "Yes, Sylvester complains about his work and tries to shirk his duties on a regular basis," I said. "He can also do some very doltish things, like impregnating my adoptive mother during these chaotic times, but when it counts, he really does put his neck on the line to protect me. I won't hesitate to help him when I can." "Rosemine, in truth, I'm far more troubled by the Lies Gangs who are stirring up chaos while claiming to be my supporters." And that brought me to the true focus of our meeting, our plan to enact a generational shift that would snuff out the will of the Lies Gangs for good. I understand why people might be opposed to sudden change, but the Zant himself asked us to begin acting like a proper top-ranking duchy. We might as well consider that a royal decree, no? Sylvester grinned. "Yeah, you're not wrong. Thus, I believe we should establish a clear delineation of roles within the duchy." "A delineation of roles," Bonifacius repeated. "Yes, grandfather, Ehrenfest's rise to the rankings is unlikely to affect the Giebs overseeing our duchy's crops. So I think we should have some of our most conservative nobles replace those who were removed during the purge. Gieb Gerlach, Wiltord, and the others start complete pandemonium with their decisions to give their names to Lady Georgine. But there were no problems with their leadership. To my knowledge, their harvests were always bountiful as well." I was familiar enough with the crop yield of every province because I reported them to the Ob after the harvest festival. The Geebs in question had done fine jobs. For that reason, I continued, we should replace the removed Geebs with people who value consistency and are likely to follow exactly in their predecessors' footsteps. People who know the struggles of sudden change all too well. That should make the transition to power easy on the farmers and the servants in those provinces. Sylvester gave an amused smile. Makes sense, but there are always some hiccups when taking on a new role. Plus, we don't want to officially make them Geebs, and to discover they don't have what it takes, so I'll give each of them a 3-year trial period. You Archduke candidates can speak with the farmers and servants when you visit the provinces for spring prayer or the harvest festival. If you discover that the new Geebs are doing well, I'll allow them to keep their positions. This should ensure that they work hard to prove themselves and aren't unfair to their people. As for the more ambitious and forward-thinking nobles, let us assign them duties in the castle no matter their faction. No matter their faction, Bonifacius cried. I didn't consider any of my suggestions to be particularly strange. But he was taken aback by them all. It just went to show how much my way of thinking differed from that of standard nobles. Now that I thought about it, were Ferdinand and Sylvester strange for actually listening to my ideas and adopting the ones they agreed with? Those who committed crimes have already been punished or distanced, have they not? I asked. The former Veronica faction is as good as gone, and we cannot afford to cast aside at talented and motivated individuals. That said, Charlotte did identify a weakness in this plan. I went on to explain Charlotte's concern on top of what we had discussed with my retainers. I see, Sylvester murmured. It is a good idea, but doesn't stand strong enough on its own. Charlotte has a keen eye. Indeed she does. She also said that taking a second wife from Lie's gang would serve as the most peaceful resolution. This seems to overlap with Dunkelfelger's advice that we should have a first wife who focuses on introductory diplomacy and a second wife who keeps our nobles under control. In response, Sylvester gave a bit of a gloomy expression. He don't want to. He only wants Florencia. But I mean, yes, he loves Florencia, really, a lot. But he does need to take this in consideration here. Let's see. How long have I been recording? 41 minutes. I'll do one more. Brunhilde's suggestion. May I have permission to speak, Ob Ehrenfest? Brunhilde asked, stepping forward from among my otherwise silent retainers. She looked tense, but her amber eyes were full of resolve. Sylvester nodded. After offering a few words of thanks, Brunhilde gracefully approached Sylvester. She knelt in front of him, crossed her arms, and declared, I am Brunhilde, daughter of Duke Grosho. I have just finished my 5th year at the Royal Academy. Yeah, you were recognized as an honor student, Sylvester replied offhandedly. I saw you at the introductory tournament and during the award ceremony. I am honored to have received your attention, Brunhilde said. She then looked at Sylvester straight in the eye and asked, What? Will you grant me the position of your second wife, Ob Ehrenfest? What the fuck? Brunhilde, what are you doing? I guess it makes sense, sort of. She is a Lie's gang, and it would need to be someone that wouldn't, try anything in the shadows, or feed the Lie's gang's information, I guess would be our best option. The room fell dead silent, and we all stared at the kneeling Brunhilde. I couldn't even process what I had just heard, and had completely out of the blue. The odd second wife? Brunhilde? Brunhilde marrying Sylvester? As soon as I managed to connect the dots, I was overcome with panic. I practically leaped to my feet with a loud clatter and managed a single step toward my kneeling retainer. What? Hold on. Hold your horses. Take a deep breath, Brunhilde. You need to get a grip. I think you need to get a grip, Sylvester retorted. He stood up as well, came to my side of the table, and started rubbing my back. Breathe. What are those noises? He just kind of came out. What do they mean, I wonder? How the heck am I supposed to know? Calm down. Oh my god. I took in my surroundings wide-eyed. Sylvester seemed entirely unmoved by Brunhilde's explosive suggestion, while Bonifacius was fidgeting a little, no doubt concerned that I was losing my marbles. Grandfather, I don't know how to calm down. I know exactly how you feel, Rosemine. As we both wriggled and squirmed, Laisletta quietly approached. Excuse me, she said, and produced a stuffed shoe meal from seemingly nowhere. Contain yourself, fools, that Laisletta, you're awesome! Thank you! That was the right call there. Thank you, Ferdinand was actually right on this one. That needed to happen. It said a familiar voice. It was Ferdinand. Well, his shoe meal equivalent. Breathe in. I snapped back to reality and reflexively began sucking in air. I gulped down more and more, waiting for him to tell me to breathe out again, but he never did. My lungs soon became too full to hold out anymore, and when it hurt too much to bear any longer, I finally exhaled. Just how much air did you want me to breathe in, Ferdinand? I snapped at the stuffed shoe mill, my eyes brimming with tears. Lizetta smiled. I'm glad you remember the deep breathing technique, Lady Rosemary. I now ask that you remember to act more like a noblewoman. Holding the cute shoe mill in her arms, she activated the magic tool again. And you call yourself an Archduke candidate, it said. Embarrassing. Wow! How did he manage to make it apply to what he was actually saying? Oh my god. Or what was actually going on? I swiftly returned to my chair and sat up straight. I'm fine now. I'm calm. Let us continue our discussion. That works, huh? Sylvester mused aloud. Good job. You can stand down. After praising Lay's letter for her quick-wittedness, he went back to his seat and cast his eyes from me to Brunhilde. Judging by Rosemine's reaction, I assume you didn't consult her about this, he said. That is correct, Brunhilde replied in a hushed voice. I did not discuss this with Lady Rosemine, nor with my father, Guy Groschel. Lady Florencia and the other Archduke candidates know not about this either. So essentially, she did this on a whim. Sylvester's eyebrow twitched, but he let her continue. Lady Rosemine is only slightly aware of this, but she is a dominant power within the Lies Gang faction. My father, Guy Groschel, also holds great influence. Had I discussed this with them in advance and put my request to you formally, Ob Ehrenfest, then it would have been very hard for you to refuse. That is why I am acting independently. If you oppose my suggestion, then you can pretend it was merely a spur-of-the-moment jest. It seemed that she had concluded that this was the only way we could discuss the idea without it being chained to the will of the Lies Gangs. Brunhilde continued, I also believe that rather than having me forced upon you as your second wife, you should choose someone whom you think will be able to lead Ehrenfest. I am told that you decided to pair Lord Wolfried with Lady Rosemine for the sake of the duchy, so I expect you will take another wife for the same reason. Let's translate that. You need to pick a second wife instead of pushing everything onto your son and adopted daughter. Stop trying to run away from your duty. Sylvester looked away from Brunhilde for a moment as if conceding to her straightforward stare, then met her gaze again. I'll hear you out, he said. My gratitude is yours, Brunhilde replied. Then in a calm voice and while continuing to kneel, she said, I did not know this before hearing Lady Charlotte's position and proactively gathering intelligence within the Lies Gang faction, but it seems that Lies Gang considers the Archducal family's position that prioritizing a union with the top-ranking duchy is more important than marrying a noble within Ehrenfest, even so soon after the purge, to be very dangerous. They are once again starting to doubt that Lady Rosemine will end up marrying Lord Wolfried. This position had reignited claims that I should be the duchy's next ruler, instead strengthened the argument that neither Sylvester nor the next Ob needed a wife from a top-ranking duchy, and given birth to the opinion that we don't want any brides from top-ranking duchies here. If raising our rank means we have to take them in, then we'd rather not raise our rank at all. Up until this point, the Lies Gangs have strengthened their bond with the Ob through marriage. You can assume most of their concerns simply by taking a second wife, Lies Gang wife, and indicating that you respect them. She managed to find out all that since my meeting with Charlotte. My retainers are super talented. It seemed that Hartman wasn't the only skilled intelligence gatherer in my service, or maybe being a Lies Gang had made it easier for her. A second wife can have a tremendous impact on a duchy's future, Brunhilde continued, and I realized that even making this suggestion would normally require a lot more groundwork. I really did not intend to come forward, but I could no longer bear to watch matters as they were. She looked sympathetically at Sylvester and his retainers. My decision to speak is based on the understanding that Ehrenfest is in dire straits wherein every moment counts. Every moment counts, I repeated, cocking my head. What do you mean? It seems to me that during the purge, Ob Ehrenfest punished more than half of his retinue. The situation is so serious that he needed to borrow Lady Florencia's retainers just to come here to the northern building. I imagine these conditions are having a significant impact on the Archducal couple's duties. What? Sylvester and Florencia were my adoptive parents, but I didn't see them often enough to have memorized their retainers. My eyes widened and I stared at Sylvester in shock. Brunhilde explained, despite knowing each of your children's workloads, you as Ob Ehrenfest sought Lady Rosemine's help rather than your blood daughter, Lady Charlotte, during the Archducal family meeting. I assume you did this not just because you were concerned about Lady Florencia's pregnancy, but also because you needed Lady Rosemine's help to replenish your retinue. With her supporting Lady Florencia, it would be easier to take Lies Gang nobles as retainers. You wish to obtain the Lies Gang support even though such indirect methods, or through such indirect methods. Is that correct, Ob Ehrenfest? Sylvester's lips shifted up a bit, but he didn't respond. The fact that he hadn't rejected the idea was enough to guess that her analysis was correct. If one also considers how Ob Ehrenfest is relying on Lord Bonifacius to obtain intelligence, it becomes clear how urgently he required the support of the Lies Gangs. In light of Lady Florencia's condition, however, he will not be able to take a second wife for at least 2 years. Oh, if he's completely boxed in. However, as it is obvious, I am underage. Considering the 1-year engagement period that would start after I graduate, we would need to wait at least 2 years for our starbind ceremony. By then, there would no longer be any risk of any mana influencing Lady Florencia's pregnancy and birth. Brunhilde's amber eyes contained an unmistakable sparkle as she continued. If you announced that you were going to take a second wife from the Lies Gang faction, I expect that their concerns will gradually fade, much like they have in the past. Marrying the daughter of the province that was both Lady Veronica's home and the one most aggressively opposed to her would mean more to the Lies Gangs than you anticipate, Aberenfest, she smiled. And with a fiancé, it would be much easier for you to refuse any marriage proposals you received during the Archduke Conference. Brunhilde had employed that last remark precisely because she knew that Sylvester wasn't at all motivated to take a wife from another duchy, and was agonizing over the inevitable flow of proposals. Lady Rosamund often spends time locked away in the temple, but I, her attendant, am mostly in the castle, Brunhilde said. It would therefore be more than possible for me to stand at the forefront of socializing with the Lies Gangs. I was also part of the same faction as Lady Florencia to begin with, meaning I would provide her support and never oppose her. I can make up for her absence while cooperating with Lady Charlotte, whom I even socialized alongside the Royal Academy. Brunhilde puffed out her chest and continued. I was a central figure in all of Lady Rosamund's tea parties and meetings with top-ranking duchies and the royal family, for I took charge of preparing for them and hosting the guests. I am confident that I have more experience socializing with top-ranking duchies than almost anyone else in Ehrenfest. Were I to become the Ob's fiancé, I would be able to cooperate with Lady Charlotte while simultaneously training attendants who would be going to the Archduke Conference. Yep, it all works out. As the retainer of an adopted daughter, Brunhilde would struggle to speak authoritatively to the adult retainers of the Archducal couple and others. As a second wife working hard to support the first, however, she would be able to do whatever was needed. It would become much easier for her to use her experience to produce attendants capable of dealing with top-ranking duchies. If we can compensate for Lady Florencia's absence and make quick progress on the generational shift that Lady Rosamund has suggested, it should become easier to make use of the younger members of the former Veronica faction, Brunhilde said. That should also allow you to bring back the retainers you were forced to distance. Sylvester narrowed his eyes just a little, watching her closely. You're obviously a lot more observant than I expected, and nobody can deny that you've considered all this very carefully. However, I'm not sure you should be so readily offering to become my second wife, and that's right, I exclaimed. Brunhilde, you are so considerate, talented, and amazing. It would be a complete waste for you to become the second wife of Sylvester of all people. You're so much cooler and more reliable than he is. Burn! Rosamund, Sylvester said, his mouth twitching as everyone else tried to stifle their laughter. His frustration meant nothing to me, though I was speaking the truth. I mean, he already has Florencia. He loves her more than anyone, doesn't have eyes for any other woman, and complains nonstop that he doesn't want to take a second wife. I can't see a future unless when you're happy being married to a man like him, and that's why I'm opposed to it. If you're going to marry anyone, I want it to be a man who will treat you right and show you nothing but love and respect. Brunhilde's eyes widened in bewilderment. If that's the case, then why did you agree to marry Lord Wolfried? Do you expect him to show you love and consideration? No, but he won't mind me using Ehrenfest's bookroom as I please. Our union will also help advance the printing industry, so you agree that love has no place in matters of marriage. Ah! She's turning it on you! You can't be you're being a hypocrite on this one. You can't say that love is important in a marriage when you're not even doing that for yourself, you know? That's right. The only love I've considered is my love of books. As someone who was already engaged, I should have chosen my words more carefully instead of saying the first thing that came to mind. I desperately racked my brain trying to figure out how I could recover from this. But, you know, Wilfred and I love each other as family. We've always been on good terms, and his promise to Ferdinand and Liesgate means that we'll stay that way. Even if our marriage is a political one, I don't think he'll ever treat me poorly. Brunhilde gave me a very uncomfortable look while Sylvester grimaced. Rosamund, do you think I'll treat Brunhilde poorly? He asked me. She's the daughter of Guy Groschel. How could you think I'd do something so foolish? I guess that as Ehrenfest you would indeed put some effort into being nice to her. Some effort? Take this, you little fiend. Sylvester prodded my cheeks, looking very thoroughly displeased. It actually hurt, so I called out for Bonifacius to help me. In one smooth motion, my savior smacked Sylvester's hand away with a loud, hold back a little, will you? Jeez. Do you need me to heal you, Sylvester? I asked. I think I heard something crack. Nah, the important thing right now is that your retainer wants to be my second wife and is ready for whatever that entails. While you seem entirely against the idea, should I take this as your official stance? I turned to Brunhilde for her opinion. Lady Rosamund, she said with a very pretty smile, I sought to be a retainer because I wished to market your trends. I am glad that my wish was granted, but now I can take this even further as the Ob's second wife, marketing trends through you and Lady Florencia. Her face lit up with hope and ambition. I would also appreciate the opportunity to challenge myself and set my own trends as a member of the Archducal family. This wasn't the stance of someone sacrificing themselves to contain the Lies gangs. Rather, she had found the perfect opportunity to make her dream come true and was using it to the fullest. Brunhilde is way too cool! As a second wife, Lady Rosamund, I could take care of socializing within the duchy in your stead. There would be no need for you to learn all the ways of the old world. They are a thing of the past. I wish to unite Ehrenfest so that there are no problems whatsoever when it comes time for you and to rule with Lord Wilfrid. The attitude of a model retainer, Bonifacius remarked. Very respectable. I acknowledge you as Sylvester's second wife. Grandfather likes her. Wait, what just happened? Paying my confusion no mind, Bonifacius sat back down with a satisfied grin and returned to sipping his tea. Brunhilde was giving me a fixed stare, waiting for me to either approve or refuse her suggestion. I think Brunhilde's decision is best for Ehrenfest, I eventually said, but I would not like to lose her as a retainer. Brunhilde gave a small smile. Then please allow me to serve you until my graduation at least. That is when most female retainers are expected to resign and get married anyway, is it not? That's true, but... I will train Bertilda and Gracia so that you are not troubled without me. Please rest assured. In the majority of cases, women who came of age would resign almost immediately to get married. Sylvester had thus told me to train new retainers and welcome some of the mature women who had already had children into my service. Looking at those of my retainers who came very close to coming of age actually made me a little sad. Sylvester sighed, having watched our exchange. Brunhilde, what about Groshel's successor? He asked. Aren't you expected to take a husband who can support you being the next Geeb? Oh yeah, Brunhilde was in fact supposed to become the next Geeb Groshel. Maybe her father would forbid her from becoming the Ob's second wife, but before we could dwell on the idea for much longer, Brunhilde dismissed the notion with a somewhat bitter smile. Perhaps I could go out and find a husband to that end, but my little sister Bertilda will certainly find someone much more talented than I once I am Ehrenfest's second wife, and Groshel has finished its transformation into a commerce city. Besides, father's second wife seems to have given birth to a boy who may end up being the maiden successor instead. Oh, okay. If a family had a son available, they would generally make him their successor. As such, even though Guy Groshel wouldn't announce it until his newborn son came of age, we could guess that Brunhilde had already been told that she wouldn't be the next Geeb. I knew it was tradition, but it saddened me to think that the hard work preparing her hard work preparing for the role had effectively been stomped on. I think what matters most for Groshel right now is working with the Archducal family and making sure this Entwiskeln succeeds, Brunhilde said. She had been planning to marry a skilled and competent man from another duchy to help support her province, but few talented men would want to marry into a province that failed its revolution. In particular, with Florencia's pregnancy shifting the schedule and causing various plans to change, Brunhilde thought about that bringing a husband into Groshel was less important than marrying in the Archducal family, and using her position as second wife to ensure that Entwiskeln succeeded. Ehrenfest could take responsibility for renovating Groshel, but my father would feel disrespected and may even protest, Brunhilde explained. By having me arbitrate as a second wife, however, we can instead make him feel as if he is receiving special treatment. She really was overflowing with the resolve to make her province's Entwiskeln succeed no matter the cost. In my opinion, there was no one better suited to becoming the next Geeb. I should note that I have my own reasons for wanting to become second wife, Brunhilde said, but I am not seeking the Ob's favor. Rather, I wish to use my skills to their fullest in service of supporting Ehrenfest. She then confidently reiterated that Sylvester was free to refuse her proposal since she had deliberately acted alone. Sylvester chuckled, went over to Brunhilde, and extended a hand to her. Your spirits won me over, he said. I'll request a meeting with Guy Groshel. Prepare an outfit good enough to be worn outstage during the upcoming feast, and a proposal face stone. I am honored, Brunhilde replied, taking his hand with a victorious smile, her flowing crimson hair cascading down her back. Brunhilde marrying Sylvester? Yeah, that's not what I expected to happen. I was never expecting Sylvester to take a second wife, to be completely honest with you. I was not. I figured he would just avoid it forever, essentially. But nope. Actually, this is the best case scenario. It's one of Rosemine's retainers. Someone who already knows everything that she needs and what she needs to do, what needs to be improved on, and she can act in her stead. This is perfect. Wonder what Florencia would think about this. This was something she wanted, and I knew it would be best for Ehrenfest, but still, I couldn't really throw my hands up and celebrate. My head was a mess of conflicting emotions. I wasn't used to the whole concept of second wives to begin with. Hearing about it in passing was fine, since I could just write it off as part of the culture in this world, but the thought that it was going to happen to someone close to me just felt wrong. Especially when Sylvester truly loves his second wife, and his first wife, I mean. Here in Jurgensmith, it was normal to have your father decide your partner for you, as the fact that Brunhilde had fought for and won an engagement she wanted could be seen as a huge victory. At the same time, however, I thought it was concerning that this had all been decided while the first wife was absent and pregnant. I was worried about how Florencia would take the news. Yeah. And Ordonez, Bonifacius suddenly muttered, setting down the sweet in his hand and glaring out the window. We all followed his gaze, but there was nothing there. I don't see anything, I said. Give it a moment. About 10 seconds later, a rough outline of the Ordonance came into view. It flew into the room and perched on Karstad's arm, all while I was still reeling over the absurd strength of Bonifacius' eyesight. Commander, the bird said, this is a report from Gerlach. We all stared intently at the Ordonance. The Knight's order had taken Matthias and the others to investigate Gerlach. Has something happened there? After we investigated several hidden rooms it continued, Gerlach's son suggested that the Guide might yet live. We ask that you come to the scene as soon as you can. Bonifacius was the first to stand. He met Sylvester's gaze and nodded. Stay here, Karstad, Sylvester said. I need focus on winning over the lies gangs. Right, Bonifacius said. And there won't be any mistakes this time. I refuse to come back empty-handed. And with that, he flew out of the room, his retainers hot on his heels. Matthias and the others, before I could even finish, Sylvester replied, they'll be supporting Bonifacius. Karstad, I'm going. Karstad gave a firm nod in response. His fists were clenched like he really wanted to rush off as well. Sylvester looked back down at me, then flicked me on the forehead. Your retainers are there, Rosemine. You don't need to go too. I understand your impatience, but the Ferdinand was the one who always looked after you, and he's not here anymore. There's no longer anyone who could save you from whatever mess you end up in. Right. That goes for the both of us, he said. We'll be in for a world of trouble if we keep acting like we used to. And then, like Bonifacius, he briskly exited the room. Brunhilde, do you need any help with your outfit or proposal face done? I asked, my eyes still fixed on the door that Sylvester and the others had just left through. You don't have much time, do you? Will you be able to manage? We had returned to Ehrenfest first out of all the Royal Academy students, so we had more time before the spring feast than usual, but that still didn't amount to much. I would struggle to order new clothes on such short notice, and wearing them would lead to negative assumptions that I had been planning this for some time, she replied. Thus, I simply intend to alter what I wore at the start of winter socializing to make it a bit fancier. As for the face stone, thanks to you, I already have some rather high-quality specimens. I am sure one will suffice. It will be best to begin making it now, but I must wait for Ab Ehrenfest to speak with Father. It was important to make it look as though Sylvester was proactively seeking the Lies Gang support instead of merely acting as Brunhilde's suggestion. We would all need to pretend we hadn't heard of anything until the discussion with Guy Gerlach took place. Brunhilde concluded, I expect that I will receive a sudden summons from Father, then rush home to begin preparing. Very well, I said, I am going to be spending the time until the spring feast at my leisure. I cannot leave the Northern Building under any circumstances, nor can we summon the planting company here when wide-scale punishments have put the castle in such a grim state. Our yearly book sale is going to be cancelled too, so you may dedicate yourself to your preparations. Arlie and Lazletta nodded along with me, wearing reassuring smiles, while Grisha declared that she would be working hard too. Riarda, in contrast, stepped forward with a bit of stony expression like she was agonizing over something. Milady, it truly does pain me to say this, but I have a heartfelt request. If possible, might you permit me to return to Lord Sylvester's side? It had been Sylvester who assigned Riarda to me in the first place back when I became his adopted daughter. She had supported me when I was still adjusting to life as a noble, and trained my retainers when I barely had any. You now have plenty of retainers, Riarda said, both from the Lies Gang and the former Veronica faction. They will all serve you properly and work very well together. Thus, I would like to return to serving Lord Sylvester, who has so few retainers right now that he is having to share with his wife. I understand your concern very well, Riarda. It really is hard when you don't have retainers you can trust. The demands placed on the Archducal family required us to entrust our work, our comfort, and even our lives to our retainers. I was more aware than anyone that you couldn't just act as you pleased. Doing that would get you in trouble with those in your service, and in short, trying to function without retainers because you trust was borderline impossible. Your entire world would crumble around you. I couldn't even begin to imagine what my life would be like if I abruptly lost more than half of my current retinue. Now that Brunhilde is becoming Ehrenfest's second wife, it would also be best for someone to arbitrate between her and Lady Florencia, Riarda continued. Brunhilde will surely feel more comfortable during the engagement if she can see someone familiar by the Archducal couple's side. I appreciate your concern, Brunhilde said, and your being there will definitely help me, but will Lady Rosemine not struggle if she loses 2 attendants at once? That was a good question. I pondered it while looking over my attendants. Once the feast celebrating spring is over, Milady will return to the temple, Riarda said. Arlie and Lazletta will suffice for as long as she is there, and while Grisha's education in the castle is not yet adequate, She is more than competent and will start catching up soon enough. You will remain her attendant at the Royal Academy, and Bertilde is expected to join her service. I do not believe she will be nearly as troubled as the Archducal family is now. Not all of Wilfred's attendants had been replaced, meaning there were still a few members of the Vormvronic faction among them. But I didn't know the details of what had happened to them. Melkor should have been in the winter playroom with the other kids, starting to pick his own retainers, but instead he was isolated in the northern building. He only had the adult retainers his parents had chosen for him, and 3 older student retainers to guide him. Riarda is correct, I said. Out of everyone in the Archducal family, Charlotte and I have the most stable entourage right now. It would be better for me to let Riarda go than have Charlotte move her retainers to support Florencia, especially as I intend to hide away in the temple. Plus, Riarda had served Sylvester to begin with. She would be able to resume her duties under him without the need for any adjustment or training. Brunhilde nodded. In that case, I will have a long conversation with Lady Elvira and make sure that Bertilde's education is completed by next winter. She had already begun planning for the future. I turned my attention from Brunhilde to Riarda. From the castle and the Royal Academy, you have always been there to support me. I am going to feel very lonely without you, I must admit. But I know that my adopted father is struggling even more. Please lend him your support. You have my thanks, milady. I informed those in my service that Audley was soon to be my new head attendant, then sent an ordinance to Sylvester. I am returning Riarda to you, it said. Please employ her as a retainer. I am not about to steal more of your retainers, came his immediate and very loud response, but I paid it no mind. Riarda, I said, this is my last order for you as your lady. Give my adopted father a firm spanking, and make sure he does all of his paperwork. Also, I would ask that you manage the main building such that news about Brunhilde becoming Ehrenfest's second wife does not bother my adoptive mother during her pregnancy. My wish is that she welcome Brunhilde as an ally. Consider it all done, milady, and everyone, I entrust Lady Rosamond to you. You may count on us. From there, I sent Riarda on her way. Sylvester would have no choice but to accept her now that I was pretty much forcing her upon him. Plus, he was literally desperate for retainers he could trust right now. That much was obvious. Sometime later, I received an ordinance from Sylvester thanking me. Riarda had evidently managed to change his mind. Okay, I'm going to have to end this off here, and I'll see everybody in the next one. Woo-wee! What a bombshell that was dropped! I'll see you on the next one.